Welcome to Moonlight Myths, where you'll hear stories about myths and monsters and look into worlds beyond ours. Before we get started, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Then let the story take you on a moonlit path into your imagination, or maybe into a new realm of reality itself. There's a story that's been told for over 1,000 years, but we've only recently begun to understand what it really means. It's the story of Lilith, a woman whose greatest crime was believing she deserved equality. Most people have never heard of Lilith, even though her story appears in ancient Jewish texts. She's mentioned only once in the Bible itself, a fleeting reference in the book of Isaiah as a creature of the wilderness. But in medieval Jewish writings, particularly a text called the Alphabet of Ben Sira from around the 8th to 10th century, Lilith becomes something more, the first woman, created before Eve. And her story changes everything about the Garden of Eden. Created equal. According to this ancient tale, when God created Adam from the dust of the earth, he also created a woman, Lilith, from that same earth. Not from Adam's rib, like Eve would later be. From the same material, in the same way, at the same time. Lilith and Adam were identical in origin. Neither came from the other. Neither was made to serve the other. They were created as equals, two halves of humanity, both bearing the image of the divine. This should have been paradise. Two people, equal in creation, equal in dignity, equal in their relationship with God and with each other. But equality, it turns out, is harder to live than to declare. The refusal. The medieval text tells us that Adam and Lilith immediately began to argue. And the argument was about something deeply intimate, their physical relationship. Adam expected Lilith to lie beneath him during their intimate moments. It wasn't just about position, it was about hierarchy, about who would be above and who would be below, about who would lead and who would submit. And Lilith said no. "Why should I lie beneath you?" she asked. "We are equal, for we are both made from the earth." It was such a simple statement. Such a reasonable question. If they were truly created equal, why should one be expected to submit to the other? Why should equality in creation not translate to equality in relationship? Lilith wasn't asking for dominance. She wasn't demanding to be above Adam. She was simply asking for what she'd been given from the beginning: equality, partnership, mutual respect. She was asking to be treated as what God had made her to be, a full human being, not a subordinate one. The price of speaking truth. Adam refused. He insisted that Lilith submit. And when she wouldn't, when she continued to assert her equality, she made a choice that would define her for millennia to come. She spoke the divine name, the secret powerful name of God, and she left. In that moment, Lilith faced a choice: stay in paradise and accept inequality, or leave and maintain her dignity. She chose dignity. She chose to honor what God had made her, an equal, rather than accept what Adam demanded she become, a subordinate. This wasn't rebellion for its own sake. This wasn't pride or wickedness. This was a woman insisting on being treated according to how she was created. And for this, she was cast as a villain for the next 1,000 years. The demonization. The medieval tradition didn't stop with Lilith leaving Eden. It transformed her into a demon, a child killer, a seductress, a force of chaos and evil. Protective amulets were made to guard against her. She became the thing mothers feared in the night, the explanation for infant death and miscarriage. But one must ask, why was she demonized? What if Lilith's transformation into a monster wasn't a description of what happened to her, but a warning to other women? What if making her into a demon was a way of saying, this is what happens when you refuse to submit? This is what you become when you demand equality. For centuries, Lilith was held up as a cautionary tale. The message was clear: don't be like Lilith. Accept your place. Submit to authority. Don't speak words of power that aren't yours to speak. But that message depended on believing that Lilith was wrong to leave, wrong to demand equality, wrong to honor how she was created. And more people are beginning to question that interpretation. What she really wanted. When the centuries of demonization are stripped away, when one looks at the core of Lilith's story, what emerges? A woman who wanted to be seen as an equal partner. A woman who believed that how she was created, equal to Adam, should matter in how she was treated. A woman who thought that partnership meant mutual respect, not hierarchical submission. She wanted what any person wants in a relationship: to be valued for who they are, to have their dignity honored, to be treated as a full partner rather than a subordinate. She didn't want to dominate Adam. She didn't want to destroy the garden. She didn't want to bring chaos into the world. She just wanted equality. The equality she'd been created with. And when that was denied, she made the hardest choice anyone can make. She chose to be alone and whole rather than partnered and diminished. The woman in the wilderness. After Lilith left Eden, the story says she went to the wilderness. And there's something profound about that image. The wilderness, in biblical tradition, is a place of testing but also of transformation. It's where people go to find themselves, to encounter God without the mediation of civilization, to become who they're meant to be. Lilith chose the wilderness, chose the unknown, the difficult, the lonely, over a paradise that required her to be less than she was created to be. That's not demonic. That's courageous. Yes, the wilderness is hard. Yes, exile is painful. Yes, choosing integrity over belonging comes at an enormous cost. But Lilith made that choice because she understood something fundamental. Paradise isn't paradise if you have to betray yourself to stay there. God's original design. Here's what strikes one most about Lilith's story. She wasn't asking for something revolutionary. She was asking to be treated according to God's original design. God made her equal to Adam. That was the divine intention. That was the original plan. Lilith wasn't rebelling against God. She was insisting that the way God made her should matter. She was refusing to let Adam's interpretation override the Creator's intention. In that sense, Lilith wasn't the rebellious one. She was the faithful one. She was the one who honored how she was created, even when it cost her everything. Adam wanted to impose a hierarchy that wasn't there in creation. And when Lilith wouldn't accept it, when she insisted on the equality God had given her, she was punished, not by God, but by the tradition that told her story. What has been lost? For over 1,000 years, Lilith's story has been told as a warning. She has been made into a monster to frighten women into submission, to make equality seem dangerous, to suggest that demanding dignity leads to damnation. But in doing so, something important has been lost. The example of a woman who knew her worth has been lost. The witness of someone who chose integrity over acceptance has been lost. The voice of a person who looked at an unjust situation and said, clearly and firmly, no, has been lost. Lilith has been made into a demon, but perhaps what was really demonized were the very qualities most needed: the courage to assert boundaries, the wisdom to know when a situation is untenable, the strength to walk away from what diminishes us. Reclaiming the story. Today, many people are reading Lilith's story differently. They're seeing not a demon, but a woman who demanded the respect she deserved. Not a villain, but someone who refused to accept inequality as the price of love. They're recognizing that Lilith's story is the story of anyone who has ever been told to make themselves smaller, quieter, less than they are. It's the story of anyone who has been expected to submit not because it's right, but because it's traditional. And it's the story of choosing oneself, choosing one's dignity, choosing to honor how one was made, even when the cost is enormous. This reclaiming isn't about making Lilith into a perfect hero. It's about recognizing that her demand for equality wasn't monstrous, it was human. It was right. It was what God had already given her in creation. A different ending. The medieval tradition gave Lilith a tragic ending, transformation into a demon, eternal exile, perpetual otherness. But that ending doesn't have to be accepted. Lilith can be seen differently, as a woman who left the garden not in rebellion, but in faithfulness to who she was created to be. As someone who chose the difficult path of authenticity over the easier path of compliance. She can be honored not as a demon to fear, but as an ancestor of everyone who has ever stood up and said, I deserve equality. I deserve respect. I deserve to be treated as what I am, a full human being, made in the image of God. That's not a curse. That's a blessing. That's not a fall. That's a choice made with eyes wide open, understanding the cost and willing to pay it. What Lilith teaches. Lilith's story teaches that equality isn't something one should have to argue for. It's something one is created with. And when systems, relationships, or traditions demand it be given up, there is a right to refuse. It teaches that there's a difference between harmony built on mutual respect and peace built on someone's silence. It teaches that staying isn't always the right choice, that sometimes leaving is the most faithful response to an untenable situation. And it teaches that being called a monster for demanding dignity says more about those doing the naming than it does about the one being named. Lilith is often portrayed as the first woman to say no. And that's true. But perhaps more importantly, She was the first woman to say yes, yes to herself, yes to her dignity, yes to honoring how God created her. She looked at a choice between paradise with inequality or wilderness with integrity, and she chose integrity. That's not a demon. That's not a villain. That's a woman who understood that she was created equal, and refused to forget it. Perhaps it's time to stop demonizing her for that. Perhaps it's time to recognize that Lilith's greatest crime was simply wanting to be treated as what she was, equal, whole, and worthy. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's not a crime at all.